One of the most iconic characters of all time and one of my favorite game franchises has to be Sonic the Hedgehog. I've talked about Sonic before on this channel, and I will continue to talk about Sonic on this channel because I am a fan of Sonic. I, of course, first saw Sonic the Hedgehog blazing on the Sega Genesis over at my uncle's house with Sonic the Hedgehog 1, unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Then I ended up getting a Sega Genesis Model 2 with Sonic the Hedgehog 2 as the pack-in title, and young RGT was like a pig in mud, just happy as hell because now he had his own version of Sonic the Hedgehog. And of course, Sonic has had his highs, he's had his lows, but I always go back to Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Maybe it's nostalgia, maybe it's high quality gameplay, which I think it is. You know, the graphics are great, the music in the game is absolutely fantastic, but Sonic the Hedgehog 2 has to be one of my favorite video games of all time. But what about the weird version of Sonic the Hedgehog 2? Because technically, there's two versions of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and I actually got the other version of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 in the same manner that I got Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for the Genesis. Sonic the Hedgehog 2 came out on the Game Gear. I actually have a sealed copy of this game because it's very nostalgic for me. This came packaged in with the Game Gear that I got for one of my birthdays, 7, 8, around there. I remember we were at a cabin in North Carolina and we needed batteries for the Game Gear. So we went down the hill, the mountain top that we were on, and we went to this little store, and all they had was a stupid battery with the cat on them, the Ever-Ready batteries. I don't even think they make them anymore, and if they do, they should get rid of them. I popped 6 of those suckers into my Sega Game Gear. It lasted for about 20 minutes, and then I couldn't play my Game Gear anymore in the mountains until we got back home. But Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was a vastly different game than Sonic the Hedgehog 1 was on the Game Gear. Sonic the Hedgehog 1 for the Game Gear kind of followed what they did with Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on the Sega Genesis. Sonic the Hedgehog 2, though, is a completely different experience from the Sega Genesis, and upon first inspection, I don't think it gives like the best initial preview of what to expect with this. You get new gameplay elements such as like these mine carts that you hop into and you kind of zip around the track. There's hidden blocks you have to break and stuff in order to access things like 1-ups or more rings and stuff like that. But the first level kind of has a bit of a drab look to it. You have a lot of these yellowish blocks and like a red background. It just doesn't look like very good. Sonic the Hedgehog himself looks fine. He animates pretty well. And of course we have a 2-button control scheme that works just fine in here in this game, but it definitely feels very different than Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Genesis. There's really a lack of, you know, emphasis on the speed portion. It more so focuses on the platforming portion. But once you get past like the first level and the first boss, which I didn't even really like the first boss either, you really get like a whole bunch of new stuff here. There's like a hang glider that Sonic can use in order to go across like large gaps and stuff like that. There's like weather effects going on in some of the levels too. There's springs that just throw you up into the clouds like higher than you've ever been before. It's actually a really good game. And of course, the fact that this is on the Game Gear, you have things like when you're playing on an actual Game Gear, the screen is cropped, it's small. Of course, you have the terrible, terrible lighting of the Game Gear with that just gross light and trying to adjust the brightness meter to make it look good. But if you play it on something like an Analog Pocket or an emulator, which you should be using for this, you actually get to see the charm of this game. You actually get to see why this game is really good. There's lots of cool levels, there's lots of cool new ideas, and I feel like nobody ever really talks about the Game Gear version of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and I get why. The Genesis version is definitely the superior version. It's a short game. I believe there's only 5 or 6 Chaos Emeralds in this game, and it's a relatively, you know, short game because of the fact that it was released for a portable system. You got to beat it in one take. You got to sit there. There's no save system or anything like that. You're playing this game, you're beating it in one take. But I do like this game. I think this game is a bit underrated, and I think it's a really fun platform game. If you're a fan of platforming games, especially if you're a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, you've probably played it. But if for some reason you haven't, I think Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Game Gear is worth checking out. I want to say I paid $9 for the sealed copy as well, but just emulate it. You know, I think it is available on Sonic Origins Plus. So if you have Sonic Origins Plus, they added in all of those Game Gear games into the Plus version of it. And this is one of those games. Great way to play the game. That's probably the ideal way to play it. So get your copy of Sonic Origins Plus like I have. comes with the Game Gear games. There's something wrong with me. I still buy Sonic stuff. I don't know why, but I don't know. Sonic's it's a part of my childhood, man. A lot of nostalgia. And yeah, so let me know if you've ever played Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Game Gear. If not, like you should. Tails is kidnapped, bro. You gotta save Tails from Robotnik, not Eggman, Robotnik. And as always, guys, thank you for coming and visiting me here on the Stash today. Bit of a shorter video. We had a longer video with the Metal Gear Solid sort of retrospective and my history with the franchise. So make sure you guys check that out if you haven't yet. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.